It was 1,000 years BC, and a new dynasty had overthrown the once mighty Shang. King Wu of Zhou was faced with the challenge of establishing his rule over his newly acquired vast territory. How would moving his capital to the east help him consolidate power? And how was the area of Mount SONGSHAN identified as the center of the earth, and therefore a suitable site for an imperial capital? Find out in the first episode of a new series, Mount SONGSHAN.
In the first lunar month of the year 1046 BC, a comet appeared in the sky above China. The comet heralded momentous events. King Zhou, ruler of the Shang dynasty, had assembled an army to fight the invading forces of Duke Wu of Zhou. But the Shang army, made up of slaves and prisoners, refused to fight. Deserted, King Zhou fled to his capital at Zhaoge, where he set fire to Lutai Palace and to himself. Following the demise of the Shang dynasty, China entered a period of prosperity under the new Zhou dynasty. Duke Wu of Zhou was now king of a vast territory. The problem that faced him was how to consolidate his rule. Zhou was surrounded by enemies. To the north were the tribes of Di. To the west were the Rong, and to the south were the Baipu and Chuman. But a more pressing concern was what to do with the surviving nobles and officials of the old Shang dynasty. Even though Shang had been defeated, they remained a serious potential threat. The issue led to a disagreement within the victorious Zhou leadership. The virtuous and highly respected military strategist Jiang Taigong argued that they should all be put to death. King Wu's younger brother Zhao Gong, on the other hand, urged the king to temper justice with mercy. For many years, Zhou's power base had been the area of modern Shanxi and Gansu in the northwest. During the reign of Duke Wen, who was Duke Wu's father, the Zhou capital was moved southward to the west bank of the Fengshui River in Chang'an County, and a new city was built there called Fengjiang. Duke Wu, when he succeeded his father, moved the capital again, this time to Haojing, near the site of modern Xi'an. From there, it would be easier to attack Shang. But having conquered Shang, King Wu was now faced with a logistical problem, as both Zhou capitals Fengjing and Haojing were over 400 kilometers from the heartland of the old Shang dynasty. Should a rebellion break out, the delay in getting an army to the scene might prove fatal. King Wu's younger brother, Zhou Gong, made a suggestion: move the capital to the east. Zhou Gong argued that in the interest of lasting stability and peace in the new Zhou Empire, the capital had to be more central. The location should be fairly close to the former Zhou capitals, but also within easy reach of the old Shang heartland. King Wu had resolved to be merciful to the defeated Shang people, so he tended to favor Zhou Gong's suggestion. The Bronzeware Museum at Baoji in Shanxi province houses a sacrificial vessel from the Western Zhou dynasty. It is known as a Hezun. Despite not being particularly large and not being the oldest piece in the museum's collection, it is nevertheless counted among its most important treasures. This is because of the 12 lines of writing engraved on the inside bottom of the container. The 122-character inscription includes the earliest written reference to 中国 or China.
主要讲的就说是这个周成王5年的时候，当时就说是按照这个武王这个克伤以后，他就是曾经有个遗愿，就是要营建这个新的这个都城。那么这样这个成王呢，就是说继承了这个武王这个遗愿。
The characters Zhongguo inscribed on the vessel obviously do not refer to China as we know it today. Instead, given that the direct translation is Middle Kingdom, they should be taken as a reference to the middle of the earth. So, just where was Zhongguo? And was it really where King Wu planned to build his capital? Mount Songshan is located at the heart of China's Central Plains. Although relatively independent, it is in fact the eastern extension of the Qinling Mountains. To the north of Mount Songshan are a series of mountains running east to west and rising to no more than 1,500 meters. To the south is Mount Qishan, also extending from east to west and reaching around 1,000 meters. Sandwiched between these two highlands is an area of low hills covering 100 square kilometers. This area is known as the Dongfeng Basin. Overall, the Mount Songshan area comprises high mountains, low hills, plains, and rivers. There's also a river valley where the fertile soil has historically provided ideal conditions for farming and animal husbandry.
因为嵩山的山，它既不是很低，也不是很高。它这个山体的范围不是很大，又有一定的深度。在人类的童年期，人们呢可以上山去采集啊，可以去这个挖地下的根茎啊，甚至到河流这边去渔猎。但到了全新市农业发生以后，人们呢又可以在浅山丘陵区、在平原区耕作，做原始的耕作，而且这个地方最好的关键就是黄土。
The Mount Songshan area enjoys a warm and temperate monsoon climate. It has 4 distinct seasons and no extremes of temperature. This being the case, it offers a favourable environment for human habitation. At the eastern end of Mount Songshan, where it meets Mount Juzi and the Jishui River, is the city of Xinjiang in Jiangzhou. 5,000 years ago, a people known as the Youxiong lived here, and their leader was the Yellow Emperor. In Jiangzhou's western hills, 60 kilometers south of Mount Xuanyuan, are the ruins of an ancient city. Archaeologists have carried out several excavations at the site and have confirmed that the city walls date back between 4,800 and 5,300 years. This coincides with the time of the Yellow Emperor, as indicated in historical records. In the Battle of Zhuolu, sometime in the 26th century BC, a tribal alliance led by the Yan and Yellow Emperors defeated and killed the rival chieftain Cheyou. Soon afterwards, at the Battle of Banchuan, the Yan Emperor was defeated by the Yellow Emperor. The 2 epic battles were fought on the Yellow Emperor's territory in the Mount Songshan area. His 2 victories significantly enhanced the status of Mount Songshan. Chinese mythology, like that in the West, contains stories about great floods. Among them is that of Guan, who was dispatched by the great sage King Yao to tame the raging floodwaters that threatened his kingdom. Guan was a member of the Xia tribe that lived by Mount Zhongshan, an old name for Mount SONGSHAN. In the course of 9 years, Guan built a series of dikes, but he ultimately failed to bring the floods under control. Guan was executed for this failure, and his son, Yu, inherited his father's unfinished task. Yu, instead of building dikes, decided to dredge the rivers and dig channels to relieve the flooding. After 13 years of work, Yu finally tamed the floodwaters. Emperor Shun was so impressed that he passed the throne to Yu instead of to his own son. Once again, the fame of Mount SONGSHAN, where Yu lived, grew. Yu was succeeded by his son, Qi. In this way, the first dynasty in Chinese history was established, the Xia dynasty. The first capital of the new Xia dynasty was at the foot of Mount SONGSHAN. In the ancient text, the Jushu Jinian, or Bamboo Annals, and Sheban, or Book of Lineages, it is referred to as Yangcheng. Yangcheng is today the town of Gaocheng in Dongfang Municipality, 40 kilometers west of Zhangzhou. At the foot of Mount SONGSHAN, two rivers, the Wudu and the Yinghe, meet to form a triangular area of scrubland. In 1975, archaeologists arrived in the area to undertake exploratory digs. What they were looking for was Yu the Great's capital. When the locals heard this, they led them to an area of elevated ground. Here, they said, Yu of Xia had built his capital. Locally, it was known as the Hill of the King's City. The archaeologists began to survey the area of high ground in earnest. And, sure enough, they found the remains of an ancient city. Later, they would prove that this must have been the Xia capital where Yu the Great and his son once lived. The Xia dynasty ruled China for around 400 years, during which time there were 16 rulers. Although their capital was moved on numerous occasions, it always remained close to Mount SONGSHAN. The last ruler of the Xia dynasty was Emperor Jie, who was cruel and tyrannical. He was defeated in battle by King Chengtang, who established the Shan dynasty. Chengtang launched his final attack against King Jie from his base in a city named Bodu, today's Zhangzhou. The city naturally became the capital of the new Shang dynasty, and it remained so for the next 200 years, until the time of the 10th king, Tai Wu. Zhangzhou became one of the major political, economic and cultural centers in Chinese history. King Wu of Zhou no doubt felt a natural affinity with an area that had been the birthplace of the Yellow Emperor and of the civilizations of Xia and Shang. But still, we come back to the question, where is the Zhongguo, or center of the earth, mentioned in the inscription on the Hezun? King Wu passed away before he could move his capital to the center of the earth. The task of moving the capital to the center of the earth fell to his younger brother Zhou Gong, Duke of Zhou. He recognized that if he was to gain the support of the nobles and the common people for moving the capital, he should convince them that he was obeying the will of heaven. So he declared that the king must live in the center of the land. At the same time, he drew up a new calendar to help improve agricultural production. In this way, he managed to convince the population that by establishing their king at the center of the earth, they would be guaranteed safe and peaceful lives. And so the Duke of Zhou set out to establish that Mount SONGSHAN stood at the center of the earth. He did so by measuring the length of the sun's shadow at midday every day on a sundial at his observatory at Yangcheng at the mountain's foot. He used the standard measurement said to have been introduced by Yu the Great. This unit was the chu, which was 1/8 the average height of a man. In ancient times, it was believed that the Earth was 30,000 li from north to south, and that every tun, 1/10 of a chu, of shadow cast by the sun represented 1,000 li of actual distance. The Duke of Zhou measured the sun's shadow at the summer solstice as 1 chu 5 tun long, the equivalent of 15,000 li. This was exactly half the distance from north to south, and therefore meant that Mount SONGSHAN was precisely in the middle. Many centuries later, in the time of the Tang dynasty, the court historian Nan Gongyu had a stone ngomon made that was an imitation of the older earthen ngomon built by the Duke of Zhou. Every year at noon on the summer solstice, the 8 chu stone ngomon cast a shadow 1 chu 5 tun long, identical to the length of the stone base on the northern upper edge. No part of the shadow could be seen from any side at the bottom of the stone base, so it seemed that there was no shadow on that day. The platform is commonly known as the shadowless platform, and it stands on precisely the spot that had been confirmed by the Duke of Zhou as the centre of the Earth. In the traditional culture of ancient China, occupying the centre of the Earth was much more than a matter of geographical convenience. It was also a powerful symbol of the belief in the divine right of kings. The ancient Confucian scholar Xunzi, in his Da Le Pian, noted that if one desires to be close to all 4 directions, it is better to be in the centre. Therefore, the king must live in the centre of the earth. However, other practical considerations had to be taken into account when establishing a new capital. Yangcheng, though at the centre of the earth, was a small, narrow place where the terrain was undulating, hardly ideal for a capital city. The Duke of Zhou studied the surrounding area and found that Luoyi, close to Yangcheng, was a more suitable location. Within a year, a new and magnificent capital had appeared in the basin at the southern edge of Mount SONGSHAN, beside the Yiluo River. The new capital actually comprised 2 cities. The western one was the King's City, and across the Jianhe River on the east bank was Changzhou. Nobles and important statesmen shared the King's City, while government offices and military institutions were located in Changzhou. Luoyi is situated in the Yiluo Basin, with mountains to the north and south. To the east and west, there were more mountains. These were passable only via rivers and narrow passes, so it was relatively easy to control movements in and out. There were 4 rivers within Luoyi's boundaries: the Luohe, the Yishui, the Jianshui, and the Jianshui. These made it possible to travel downstream to the old lands of the Shang dynasty, north to the vassal states of Qi and Lu, and east to the barbarians of the Huaihe River Valley. This accessibility facilitated the dispatch of decrees and of armies in the event of trouble. The leading scholars of the day soon began converging on Luoyi, and it became a capital that embodied the benevolence of the rulers of Zhou. Mount SONGSHAN was where the Xia, Shang, and Zhou dynasties all established their capitals. Even further back in history, the mountain was associated with the Yellow Emperor. Clearly, Mount SONGSHAN played a key role in the birth of Chinese civilization. For thousands of years, regardless of whether China was divided or united, virtually every ethnic group was conscious of the concept of rule from the center, and this, in turn, influenced their attitude to the successive ruling dynasties. But as time passed and dynasties rose and fell, the idea of the capital being in the centre became less important and was superseded by the practical requirements of effective government. But still, the rulers needed to reinforce the concept of their divine right, and to this end, each time a new dynasty came to power, a priority was to draw up a new calendar. We are, of course, all familiar with calendars. 24 hours in a day, 12 months in a year, spring, summer, autumn, winter, from the smallest unit of a second to larger units such as months and years. By referring to the calendar, we know when migratory birds will fly south, when the vegetables and melons will ripen. We are constantly dealing with time, and understanding the laws of nature helps us to manage production and our lives, when to work, when to sleep, when to transplant the rice seedlings, and when to bring in the harvest. A calendar relates to the laws of nature. The accuracy of a calendar has a direct impact on our lives. Knowing this, the rulers of successive dynasties attached considerable importance to creating the most reliable calendars. As early as 4,000 years ago, the Xia people living at the southern edge of Mount SONGSHAN formulated the very first calendar in China, the Xiaoxiaojiang. By this time, they moved from hunting and fishing to farming, and the calendar helped them with their agricultural production. Xiao meant civil matters and Jiang, government affairs. The popular belief in ancient times was that the key to conducting government affairs was formulating and issuing a formal calendar and recording astronomical phenomena, natural phenomena, and civil matters. An official calendar, since it was directly related to agriculture, was essential. Since the agrarian productive forces were backward, guiding agricultural production was important political work done by the government.
它是按月份来，正月、2月、3月、4月，其中每一月它都记载这个月的物候，就是这个月的生物变化的情况，包括植物也包括动物，气候变化的情况。你比如江河结冻或者结冰这一些情况。另外就是更重要的是天象。 现在的星星走到哪儿了？它记载的都是这些情况，说明就是那是典型的，那是当时的历法，名字就叫夏小正。
The creation of the Xiaoxiaojiang meant that the people of Xia could cultivate their land according to the farming seasons and dress for hot or cold weather according to the solar terms. It also allowed them to calculate how old they were. The Xiaoxiaojiang is still occasionally used today. For example, Chinese New Year's Day, as stipulated in the Xiaoxiaojiang, is celebrated as Spring Festival. The creation of the Xiaoxiaojiang made life for the people of Xia more convenient and prosperous. It also strengthened the position of the Xia kings. Nevertheless, when the Xia dynasty was replaced, the calendar also had to change. Instead of the Xiaoxiaojiang, the Shang dynasty introduced the Yinli. In revising the calendar, King Changtang of Shang changed the first month of the year from Yin, as it had been during the Xia dynasty, to Zhou. King Wu of Zhou, after overthrowing the Shang dynasty, made the 11th month in the Xia calendar the first month of the year. Although King Wu of Zhou's motivation in measuring the shadows cast by the sun was to identify the proper site of his capital, his efforts paved the way for later generations to take measurements that would lead to the creation of more accurate calendars.
The Shoushi calendar, when it was introduced under the great Yuan Emperor Kublai Khan in 1280, revolutionized the way the country was governed. A key role in devising this calendar was played by an observatory on Mount SONGSHAN. 700 years later, a discovery was made on the same mountain that would offer an insight into a famous ruler's physical and spiritual health. What was that discovery? Find out in episode 2 of Mount SONGSHAN.